talk that I'm doing out of series of 8, and this is the BCS Early Career Professional series that I'm doing, which I've called Real IT Bites. So we'll go into some of the previous talks later on in the session that you can still tune into and watch, and the 2 sessions that are left that you can book onto as well. And I've got my guest speaker here today, who's Emma Feltham. Do you want to say hi?
Hi everybody, I'm Emma Feltham. I'm Head of IT Delivery at National Trust. Really pleased to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks again for joining on this as well. So just going to go into a quick slide to talk about the purpose of these talks as well. So hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah, that's come up. We do have a grey hatched bot though at the moment. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, I'm just working on one screen today, unfortunately. So I think that's one of the things that Zoom does. I'm Jag Soho. I'm an IT business relationship manager at NFU Mutual, and I've been in the IT industry for 14 years, and 7 years of that as a business relationship manager. And I'm also doing some work with societies such as the Business Relationship Management Institute and the BCS in terms of promoting the role of business relationship management across the UK, and also an early career advocate for the BCS as well. So the purpose behind these are less about theory, so every talk's got less theory, but more around guest speakers and career stories, and also this opportunity for you to interact with some industry leaders that I've got presenting, and any Q&A as well. So really take this opportunity to make the most of the session, and also all of us are contactable after the event as well. It is aimed at career seekers, so young professionals, but also there's a lot of people now who perhaps the result of furlough as well, looking for the next opportunity. And I feel like there's a lack of understanding there of some of the soft skills and transferable skills that are much needed within IT. So my purpose is to increase much more diverse talent into IT, digital and transformation. And with that, the format today is a short recording that Emma and I did a long while ago now, and part of that recording we go through some of the topics around what an early career in change and transformation can really look like. So we go through a lot of areas, and we want to expand and explore those areas after the recording as well. So please use this time to Q&A while the recording's going on. If there's anything that doesn't resonate with you that we touch on, I'm happy to talk about it as well. So that will be ongoing in the chat, and Emma, I'm sure, will contribute to the chat as well. So I'm going to just present that recording now. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Jag. Nice to see you.
Yes, you too. Thank you for joining me today. The topic of today's talk is around change and transformation. So part of my series, I think it's really important for a career seeker in IT to understand a bit more about all this activity, all this exciting work that happens in organisations as part of the change and transformation cycle. And as I've said in my talks, my purpose is to encourage people more, into IT, digital and transformation. I'd love it if you could give an introduction to yourself and some of the exciting work that you're doing.
Lovely, thanks Jag. Yeah, really happy to do that. So I've been working in IT now for the last 9 years, and started off really in the business relationship management space and establishing a business relationship strategy and approach in the organisation. And then I moved into also looking after our service management team. So I've had a real kind of key background in a number of our important areas and really bedding in how we work within the organisation. But more recently, just over a year ago, I moved into a new role. So I am the senior IT supplier on a massive transformation programme within the Trust. So we are moving from our current membership system onto a new membership system. Current system's 15 years old, so it's really old. And we're also replacing our data warehouse, so how we store and access our data and make that available so that people can do the reporting they want to make decisions going forward. And then because we're replacing the systems, we've got to replace everything that connects them to everything else. So it's a really big programme, huge scale, running over several years, and really about helping the organisation as a whole to be able to do what it wants to do. So our systems have hampered us. They've made it hard for us to respond. So during the coronavirus crisis, trying to do things like offer discounts on memberships has been incredibly difficult to make that happen. But actually, it's the sort of thing you want to be able to respond to really quickly, because when something like that happens, you want to put the right things in place so you can offer the right things out to the people who are our members and supporters. So part of moving our system means that we can now do things much more quickly and responsively. So as we understand where our business is going, what our strategy is, we can do the things that actually make that happen in reality. So it's a really exciting program to be part of.
It is, isn't it? And it's just great to be involved in something like that, I can imagine. How many people do you think it's involving across the organisation and IT?
I would say we've got, probably, including the suppliers, because we've got a load of partners working alongside us as well, other companies who are providing particular expertise. It's probably about 150 people actually.
Yeah.
A really big team, and that's such a variety of people. So we've got people who represent different areas of the business, own different things that we do in the business. So people from our membership team, people from our fundraising team, people from our finance team. It includes people from our call centre they're the people who look after our members if our members have got any queries or issues. So they're key in it. And then it's got a whole raft of people from IT involved in it, as well as I said, working with some of these external partners as well. So yeah, really big team. And actually that's one of the challenges, is keeping everybody updated and informed and making sure that the right people know what's going on. And it's been an interesting challenge actually with remote working as well, thinking about how we have the right conversations happening, the right meetings happening, so people very quickly keep up to date, have access to the people they need to, and actually then get decisions made and get issues unblocked as fast as we can. And we've really moved into that way of working, particularly in the last few months, as we get into the real heat of delivering this, because you spend a lot of time with a program like this thinking about what you need, what your requirements are, but when you actually get into the doing it, building the system, setting everything up, that's when you need to be able to quickly pull people together to resolve issues as they come up.
Yeah, and the way you're sort of talking about it, it sounds very exciting. There's also like a pace to change, isn't there, which can be quite exciting for people. And so you talk about all the sort of people involved. What would you say would be some really interesting areas for maybe someone who sort of first comes into IT and they're more sort of drawn towards working in projects and change? What sort of roles and opportunities would be available to them?
So I think some of the roles that we've got with some of our people who are earlier in their career who are involved in the team, we've got some people who are sort of in project coordination type role. So we've got somebody who does project coordination. We've got somebody who's a project officer, so sort of that next step up. And we've also had some apprentice project managers as well. So all of those people are embedded in what's a really big and exciting program, but they're kind of learning in that environment where they're actually in it and seeing the reality of, what's project management really about and what needs to be done. And they do all sorts of things, so they're involved in thinking about how we do our reporting and how we provide the right information to the board for making decisions about the programme. They're involved in helping us look at who we need, so planning the resources, planning the people who are working on the programme, and looking at who's needed and when, and their forecasts, and whether or not we've got the right roles. They're helping me to onboard new people when they start, helping them to get to understand the organisation. Because one of the things I always find is people in those sorts of roles, they get to know who's who and what's going on and who knows about what. And they're really great support to anybody new who joins the team, because they know how to find out who can help with a particular issue or problem. So they get involved in supporting that with me. Through to helping look at the finances, working with our finance team. And then in the project coordination space, then sort of some of the more administrative tasks of getting the right meeting set up, agreeing who needs to be involved in what and when. So it's really varied actually. And what we've done with the people in those sorts of roles is also look at, what are the things that they want to learn more about, and what things might they be interested in terms of their next steps as well. Because I think one of the great things is when you're in that sort of a role, you can then spend time working alongside other people and learning about what jobs look like. So, we talk about job shadowing. So really understanding what does that job really do day to day, and what might I need to learn about if I'm interested in going in that direction next.
I think that's a really important point, because I think if I joined and I was told I'm part of a project at an early stage, early career, I'd feel quite intimidated by some of the responsibilities. But you're sort of saying that they're in a position where they're kind of reporting on it, so they're in a position where they're relying on a lot of the other, probably key characters in a project to do their work, and then are in a position to really observe, how these projects are run, and what's important to like a board level as well, and what's important to them. And
the other thing we do alongside that I think really helps them is giving them, and then as they've become more experienced, then giving them things to own within that. So not just throwing everything at people, but saying, right, okay, well, now with what you've learned, it'd be great if you could actually see this particular piece of work through.
Exactly.
And obviously they're doing that with people who are really experienced alongside them to mentor them and support them. But I think it's a great way where you can start to kind of grow your experience. And again, it's that thing of, if it's something you're interested in doing, if you've actually then tried it out and done a bit of it, that obviously sets you up in a better position when you go for that next role. Because if you've known that you can do it, or that you've done some learning about it, you're going to be in a much better position for that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's sort of relying on that people around you to help that kind of nurture that from you, but also takes a bit, what I've talked about in previous talks, is having those competencies, which not necessarily the skills to do the job, but the ability to be eager to learn, to make those connections, to offer your help, and to start, go the extra mile. Then people will notice you and then allocate you those kind of tasks to do, and then before you know it, you do feel like you really are contributing to something.
And what happens then is you spot the people who've clearly got that potential to take those next steps. And and I find as a senior leader, you clock that. You start to notice the people who can clearly do more and are really capable, and you start to think about those people then when other opportunities come up. That's one of the realities in the working world, isn't it? That people start to know that you've got more capability and that you've done some things. They might well then talk to you about an opportunity that's coming up. So it all helps in terms of your own career and where you go next. And I think one of the pieces of advice I was given a long time ago is always thinking about what might be next and what you might want to learn about, and how you can make those connections so that people know that you're interested, and that people start to see more, because otherwise people might just look at you in that box of that's the job you do today and that's what you are. They might not know about other things that you've either done before, or that you're good at, or that you're learning about. Unless you talk to people about those things, they're never going to know that that's where you might want to be heading.
Yeah. And also, obviously growing that talent, but getting people in. So when you're recruiting at the moment, you're really noticing that the recruitment market for what is IT is expanding rapidly.
Yeah, it's particularly the last few months I've noticed that there is so much going on in IT generally. So there's a lot of competition out there actually for people at the moment. I think employers are finding it harder to fill vacancies than the other way around, because IT is at the heart of so much now. And I think the last 15 months, the crisis we've been through, and the fact that people have had to move to so much reliance on online and remote. We all do things now through the internet. That's our lives. So much has become virtual. And that means that what we're all doing supports all of that. And that means there's just so many opportunities. And I've seen in my time in the trust that we have made so much change. We have delivered so many different projects across the organisation, but the pace of that is accelerating actually. Even with what's happened over the last year and the impact that's had on organisations, I can see that elsewhere, and talking to other people I know in the industry, that's the way it is. There is just so much going on and so much competition for good talent. I think there's going to be huge amounts of opportunities for people for careers in technology in various ways. And you're right about digital being so key. We all rely on that now to do almost everything.
Yeah. And when you really will get into delivery mode, for example, and it really ramps up, you'll be looking for just hands, just people who can help facilitate. There could be physical or virtual floor walking and things like that. So And that's when you sort of really want, a lot of people into the program as well. So it's having those people who are just literally saying, we're here, we're available, and we want to help. And you can't really go wrong, can you, really? Because there's so many areas that they can get involved in, right close to the delivery, as you said. The more the administration, and we've talked about in my previous talks, project management office, and all the fantastic work that they do guiding these projects, with the right standards and expectations that we want from a project. And also places like testing, they're quite interesting as well, because you're really, that's the crux of it. Have we really listened to the business? So are we testing something that's really going to meet their requirements? And if you've got the business person there with you to say, this is what you asked for, this is what we feel, it's just so important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the thing that's so interesting in being involved in a big transformation program like this is just the sheer variety of the roles that people are doing and the sorts of things that they're involved with. We work closely with people who own the different things that need to happen from a business point of view. So the people who are thinking about what they're trying to achieve in terms of how they're engaging with our members, for example, there's those people involved in it. We've got people who are real technical experts around different pieces of technology. So, we've got people who are architects and data experts and so on. And then we've got people who are also bringing in all of the requirements we have around data protection and information security and cyber security, because, any major system you're going live with, you've got to have built all of that in to make sure it's a safe, secure system to use. And there's a lot of law you have to comply with in that space as well. So there's loads of opportunity in there. And then you move into, as you say, all the teams then who actually do all of the build and setup of the systems and test it. And that's through from very technical testing through to, just as you describe, people who are going to use the system testing it to say, does it do what I need it to do? Yeah. Is it giving me the outcome that I'm after? And then, as you talked about as well, then making sure that everybody who's going to be using this is ready for that. And that involves working with all sorts of people, because you want to work with the people who are going to support the systems from an IT point of view going forward. And there's lots of roles in that space, working with service management and people like that. And then also making sure you've got the right contracts in place with the partners you're working with externally who are going to help support all of those systems once they're live. And the in-house teams who are going to be involved in carrying on, building on the investment that's been made in putting new systems in place, to then keep adding to that and doing more with it. And then, it's just that breadth, even when you just start to think about how many different roles are involved in all of that. And of course, we've got project managers in that space, and we've got a program manager in the team, and we've got business analysts who are working at the front end around what are the requirements and what we're trying to achieve. There's just so many different things going on. But I think it's something I want to pick up that you said that was key for me, is that ability to flex. Because when you're in a program like this, yes, this is what your role looks like, this is what it's kind of defined as, but in reality what happens is you end up getting involved more widely, and that's the nature of this kind of work. But that's also really exciting, because again, it gives you opportunities to do different things, test out different things, learn about other things, which again can lead you into other steps beyond what you're doing today. It can open doors for you in terms of your next career move, which is really interesting.
Because I suppose rolling out tech is one aspect of it, but some of the work that I do, and I wish more people in the projects would do, is just sort of really be the educator piece as well. These are people in the organisation who have now switched over to a completely new way of working, and so I'm talking more sort of internally at the moment, to have those people who understand the system and actually just sit with people and go through, a lunch and learn and explain how the system might work. You can't have, you can never have too many people who can really do that, that ability to communicate and present information in that way as well.
I think that's a really key skill, actually, and it's something that I found in all the things I've done in my career. It's one of the places I think where I naturally exist, but it's being able to sit and translate and understand and help make those connections. So it's explaining what's going on with the technology, but in a way that people understand it, because it helps them understand what that's going to enable them to do, what can they achieve by using it. And then it's helping to understand when there's an issue going on, why that's having such a big impact in the business, so that then we're trying to help fix it, get why that's really important and get what the heart of that issue is about. So I think that ability to sit and translate and connect is really, really important. And it's something that I've had feedback on previously, is just how much that's valued, particularly by key people I work with across the organisation. They value having people like me and others who can do that, because we just help make things happen as a result.
Yeah, I think it's just such an important capability, especially for businesses invested, frankly, millions, for the end user to say, I don't get it. I think that's kind of historically where IT and the business areas have kind of had that blockage, really. So if we do everything right from the beginning, really listen, really get the requirements understood, and then deliver it, we want that benefit for the next 5 years and things like that. So having people in the business having people in IT who are just sort of so meshed into the business and really understand how they want to use the systems is just fantastic. And I think that's the direction we really want to go. And as you say, there's technical roles in the program, but there's all this other, like I said, if you've really got the positive attitude, you could be really doing some exciting things that we're evolving. IT is always evolving. We need to get better in a lot of areas and mature for projects to be successful. I think if you looked at the wider statistics, maybe projects aren't as successful as you always want them to be, but it's because we need these people coming in and really helping with the communication piece.
And I think you touched on a really important point there, which is kind of around that attitude around learning as well. So one of the things that I find always helps me is I like to just delve in a little bit to what does the current system actually look like and do, and why is that difficult, and what is it that we're going to be putting in place instead. So, with some of the new technology, just spending a bit of time understanding what it actually looks like and how it functions. And I think it's a really important way to approach things, is that willingness to always want to learn more. I don't have a technical background. I'm not an IT person by training, but I'm really happy to roll up my sleeves and learn about new things as I go. And I think that's one of the reasons that then I can sit in that space to make those connections and do those translations, is because I've spent time getting my head around how things work. And I think if you've done that, then you can obviously explain it to other people as well, because you really get what it does and what it's about. So that's something I'd always encourage people to do, is to always think about, what else do I want to be learning about? And there's so much material out there now. You can find demos of systems and all sorts just by searching on the web. You can find loads and loads of things that you can just to help you learn a bit more about what it is.
Yeah. So just to round off on this piece then, what we're saying about projects and portfolio and transformation is they're constantly happening. There's constantly changing cycle happening in organisations. So if you do join a company, speak to your manager about wanting to get more involved if you're not already. And you get to work with not only across all members, many members of IT, but many divisions within that business, and also all these suppliers and third parties and all the tools and things that they bring as well. So, I wish you a lot of success with the program that you've got going on at the moment. And I suppose just to finish off then, bags of opportunity, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah, and lots of variety as well.
Yeah, lots of variety, and never be afraid to ask, what you feel like you're drawn to, what your interests are going down. So it could be that you want to shadow Scrum Master of a project a bit more. It could be that you're really interested in the cyber aspect and the fact that we try and hack our own system, for example, and you want to know more about that it could be defining of your career path in IT.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you, Emma, for that. I really appreciate your time, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Thanks, Jag. Great to talk to you.
Right. So that was some of the points that Emma and I wanted to make for this topic. And like I said, it goes into different areas as well. So it's triggered some conversation on the chat as well, hasn't it, Emma?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. And I've been trying to answer a few things as they've been coming up, but it'd probably be good for us to talk about some of those topics.
Wonderful. Yeah, so we had a question around the shift towards how online has changed software development in teams and onboarding as well. Now, onboarding has been a big topic in my organisation as well. We're bringing professional trainees in, and you've given a response to that, haven't you, Emma?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing. Definitely it's different. People starting, when everybody was in the office all the time, felt very different, I think, to when people start in this more remote world. And I think actually you have to be really conscious about what you're doing, because when you're in the office, you kind of get those chance moments to talk to people and you're just around them and you can quickly ask questions. So you have to create those opportunities for people. So I think it's really important that managers and teammates have regular touch points with new people, so that they can just check in and see what's going on and see what questions there are. And then, sort of team type check-ins. So a lot of our teams have stand-ups where every day they'll put their heads together at the start of the day and just talk about where everything's at, what's going on, what questions there are, any particular issues. And it means the team actually kind of know what's going on more widely and can support each other. One of our teams were talking about the fact that they've done two things which I really like, which is one of the teams, they've actually kind of had a sort of a video conferencing type channel open when people are sort of sitting doing desk work rather than in meetings, so that people can just be working away and then asking things as they come up, just chatting as things come up, which is really helpful, because that kind of helps to create that environment of being in the office a bit. But I also think some face-to-face time helps people. And then the other thing that's been really good is we've had people shadowing, and you can do shadowing online because people can share their screens, just as we're doing today with this. You can share content with people and they can see what you're doing, what it looks like in practice. And then somebody who's new can even then start to take the lead in that, with somebody who's more experienced sitting alongside them to answer the questions. So I think it's absolutely all doable. You just need to be much more conscious about it, because you don't just get those opportunities that just happen when you're around other human beings in person.
Yeah, there's still ways to network, isn't it? I suppose is what we're saying. And you can, in this world where we are sort of a bit more hybrid, just ask the question, pop a message on Teams, there's team groups set up. So the ability to interact with people is there, and you can drive benefits from it. The fact that I can speak to anyone at any time in a way is quite handy as well, even if it is a chat. And you could use a chat as if someone's coming to your desk, and you could say, I'll back, get back to you in 10 minutes when I can, or things like that. So you can allow it not to sort of bombard you in the same way as well. And speaking of interaction, it'd be great if people put their cameras on as well. There's no rules against cameras. So I know me and Emma can just see a lot of empty spaces here and just your name. So feel free to put your camera on as well. It really helps make the session more interactive today. And we then go on to the project management aspect of it, which I think a lot of people are interested in, but they always want to know, well, how do we go about it? So any advice, Emma, on early career in project management?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that sort of project coordination, project officer into project manager route is a great way to sort of learn on the job. I've seen a lot of people now coming through that route, and we've had quite a few people in our team in different areas across the IT department who followed that route in terms of qualification. And as I mentioned in the video, also we've had some apprentices in the project management space. And I think it's a really great way to learn on the job, rather than it just being all theory. Because I think there's an awful lot of courses out there, but I don't think anything beats actually understanding how you really apply that in practice in the actual workplace. Definitely starting in something that's more of a junior coordination role and then working your way through is what I'd recommend to anybody. I've seen so many people do it well.
And you're absolutely right. We mentioned that in the talk. Sometimes it's just the little steps that can then give you the confidence to go into actually PMing as well. So you might not want to, go straight into PMing. Start off with those coordination roles, PMO roles get you stuck in terms of how projects operate. My talk on project management office as well tells you how every project is different. So there might be elements of agile, elements of waterfall, different flavors of how we deliver projects depending on the size, complexity, and the outcomes that we want and when we want those outcomes to be. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah, PMO is a really good place actually to get that broader view of what it's all about, because you really get to see such a variety of what projects are about. And then I can see we had a question about sort of waterfall and agile. Somebody was asking about Prince and then agile. So for those who don't know, Prince is very much a waterfall project methodology. I think the difference is with waterfall, you go from A to B in step, whereas with agile you keep cycling through, you keep improving, you keep testing out and learning as you go. And I don't know about you, Jag, but I think they've both got a part to play in IT. I think there are some projects that very much are waterfall in their nature, like if you're going to replace a load of equipment, that is naturally going to be a waterfall style project. Whereas if you are developing some new software, that's where agile's great, because you can start off by building what you think the minimum needs to be based on the conversations you've had with the organisation, but then you can test it with them to say, right, this is what I think you're talking about, and then you can build on it and you can keep going and keep improving. And that's the big difference for me, is that when waterfall's bad and it's not always bad, but when waterfall's done badly, there's a conversation at the start about what the requirements are, and then all of the work happens separately, and then finally appears at the very end, ta-da, this is what I've built you. And then there can be a real gap, actually, because what you thought you understood about the requirement, rather than what actually somebody really needs it to do. But also, don't forget, businesses keep changing. So the conversation you had at the start, it might have moved on. So actually, I think that's where Agile's brilliant, because you can just be keeping on, testing and learning, going back to the key people who are going to use it and refining as you go. So I think they've both got a part to play. That's a very long answer to that, but I think they both have a part to play.
They definitely have a part to play, but also come back to the early career element, is that you bring a fresh aspect and a fresh look at things, and you can really challenge how things are done today. And I see it more and more often where people are now sort of pushing back, why spend millions on a change, on a project, when you're fundamentally not going to shift in how you change as a business. And I think we've all got a part to play, you know, as business relationship managers, as delivery managers, to really question certain departments and areas, to say, you know, we can chop and change tools in an organization, but what we really need is a change in process, a change in behaviors as well. And that really makes it, you know, for success, because that's the fundamental part of what we're trying to do commercially, is diversify or strengthen our, you know, capability as a business. And a new system, if you work a new system and it's the same processes, and so you're not really further forward, you really want to have people in IT as well that really question why we're just replacing A with B but not really changing anything.
Well, you see, don't you, with some projects where people are so used to working in a certain way, where often that can be, they've got used to working in that way because the system they've got, the old system they've got, doesn't actually allow them to do things in the best way. But then they move on to a new system and try to do the same again, rather than stopping and going, what do we really want to be able to do? What are we really trying to achieve? And you're absolutely right, that fresh look to say, actually, where are we going? What does our organisation look like now? What do we really need to be delivering? I think that's always the opportunity, isn't it? And you're right about the different kind of mindsets that are helpful. It's interesting because there's also some questions about kind of qualifications, and you know, I've talked about kind of the more hands-on routes into project management. I don't know, Jag, have you got any views about whether you think particular qualifications are really helpful from the conversations you've had around, you know, sort of PMO and PM roles before? Because I think there's a mix. I think I'm with people who have got, you know, kind of real hands-on experience, and I can see that they've got the right sort of skills. Often that's more important than just qualifications, because somebody can have all the qualifications on paper, actually real world experience I think is often more important. I don't know what you think about
that. It's been, for me, it's tied in with both as well. It's almost, for example, the BRM. I've been doing, I did business relationship management for many years, and I didn't get the opportunity to do the qualification. And so now I'm leading a team of BRMs, and then that's when the opportunity came to actually do my qualification along with my team, frankly. So it does help. I think it does help validate sometimes some of the thinking and that you are aligning to what is asked of that role, really. So I see no harm in doing that. I think it can give you a bit of a confidence boost as well, to say that you've now achieved that qualification in that specialism as well. So it can take you on a journey of specialism if that's what you choose.
I think that's such a good point, because actually I had a similar experience. I didn't do BRM professional until I'd been in the BRM space for a while.
Yep.
And actually I got more out of the course because I already had real world experience. So it was much more relevant to me than just being theory. And I think I've done the same, you know, some of the project management training I did, again, actually doing that when I was actually involved in real stuff, it made so much more sense to me. And I could actually use it straight away, because the risk can be you do a course and then it sits there because you're not using it straight away. And actually, by the time you come around to it, you've got to reflect all of that as well.
I don't think there's any course that you ever would say you'd follow to the letter. So I'm about to do ITIL, you know, version 4 in a few weeks, and these are just guides, really. So if you do the qualification, take it as a guide. And like me and Emma were saying, you know, we reached a point in our career really when we did the course, and I feel like you take away you know, I did a recommendations paper off the back of that, just to say, based on what I understand and industry experience and the qualification, these are some of the changes we can make in our organisation that are applicable. So you don't need to do things to the letter with these degrees.
And I've also seen people, you know, move from all sorts of different kinds of roles. A lot of the roles we've talked about today, I've seen people move sideways a lot across lots of those different roles. So project management, business analysis, BRM, you know, I've seen loads of people, and also service management. I've seen people hop across all of those different kinds of roles, because actually a lot of the core, what get referred to as softer skills, and a lot of those skills are applicable across all of them. And what I found is that people who generally are interested in technology and have a clue about technology and are kind of interested in learning, as we talked about in the video again, the importance of just being interested and wanting to know more, those things combined with any of those particular bits of skills, I've seen people move, come up, go sideways across all those roles over the years. So I think there's lots of opportunity. People sometimes think they've got to just follow one very particular track, and that's certainly not how my career's gone. I've not ended up going from, you know, A to wherever I'm at now, G maybe. I've not done that step by step. Sometimes I've gone sideways. And actually, if you look at where I started and where I am now, you probably wouldn't have put the two together, but each step's made sense.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll be going into a lot of these assumptions and demystifying in our next talk. Emma, won't we, about Mythbusters? So I'd really like people to join that, because I think there's a lot of assumptions people make, and that's the aim of these talks, is giving people the confidence and debunking any myths to make that first step into IT. And like you say, once you're in, you know, the advantages of working in IT when you're in a change and transformation program is all the connections, all the understanding you build about the business change that's going on around you. And then if you want to make a move after that into HR or finance or procurement, you're now sort of inducted in how the inner workings of IT works. And that's incredibly powerful. Then if you were to move into a HR role, who need technical abilities because they want, you know, reporting done within HR, or they want someone who can cultivate, you know, demand and talk to IT, for example, you're in a great position then, because you know exactly what the ask of IT would be from that division as well. So you really carry some really essential skills out into the rest of the organization. And like you said, you've got your role, you've got, you know, salary, benefits, and you're in then, and you can jungle gym as much as you like, really, in many organizations. I'd like to feedback to Nick on the chat as well. And Nick, you know, we see this a lot, you know, I've in IT, so many different degree backgrounds that are coming in, and again, there are a lot of transferable skills that can come in from any degree.
Definitely agree with that. And it's so I'm not IT. I'm not an IT professional by background. That's not where I started. You know, I came from a very different route, and actually I came into a role in IT where I thought I had everything they wanted from a business relationship management background in terms of all the other things I'd done. Didn't have IT, and I was really honest about that. And I was also really honest about how I was going to learn what I needed to, because actually I thought that the ability to sit in that middle ground and connect people together and understand what was going on in the organization, because I had all those wider skills about relationships and really understanding strategy and what priorities were, and I knew that I was somebody who was interested in things generally and that I would learn. And you know, I'm now 9.5 years into a career in senior IT roles. So completely agree. Don't think you have to have come up that IT route to end up doing something in IT. Don't underestimate all those other skills. I think my way was really interesting. I started to get involved in projects that were IT related, but I was not there as a technical person. I was there as a business person in other organisations before I joined the trust. But that meant I started to have an understanding of what technology projects were about with that other hat on. Just like you were saying, Jag, about you can move in either, you know, into different areas of a business or into IT. All those other skills were totally relevant, and you know, I've learned what I needed to learn. But actually, I rely on the people who have the technical details and the qualifications. I'm never going to have the knowledge they've got, and I'm not afraid to say that. And I go and ask the questions when I need to understand. So you know, a lot of it is about that curiosity, that will, and it really is.
Yeah, and as Emma puts it, you know, you don't need to know everything. No one's expecting you to know everything. And like I said, start small. So if you are talking to a recruiter, for example, and you are interested in a role, start those recruiter conversations and then ask them, are there any organisations that are offering any PM trainee opportunities? That's a great place to start. There's also business analyst trainee opportunities as well. So they might not be posted, but it's going back to those recruiter conversations. So I did a talk on a panel discussion called Cocktail Hour, and there's some fantastic recruiter tips in there as well that you can go into.
There's a question I have to answer because I can't not wave the National Trust flag, can I? Somebody's asking about opportunities to volunteer at National Trust. Yeah, absolutely. National Trust really relies on volunteering generally. So, you know, we've got about 10,000 employees and we've got about 60,000 volunteers. We couldn't do what we do. And a lot of the volunteers are at properties, and that's kind of really obvious to people when they visit. But actually, we have volunteers across the whole organisation. So I think, Christina, it really depends on what sort of thing you're interested in volunteering in. If you're interested in a particular location or a particular property, they are always really interested to hear from people in terms of what you might be able to do. But if you're interested in something more technical, then obviously we can follow up in terms of what might be there as a possibility for you. I think volunteering is a really good way to understand more about other types of careers as well, and to understand more about organisations you might be interested in. And I do know people who have started off volunteering with the trust and then have moved into different kinds of roles within the trust. So yeah, definitely big part of our culture. And actually we all get time to volunteer at our properties as well as part of working for the trust, which is really good. I love that part of doing. It's one of the things I really enjoy doing.
Wonderful. And we've got someone here who said they are going to now look into PMing as well, which is fantastic.
Good. There's a really interesting one here about how competitive the IT market is. It's really interesting actually, this, because it's really shifting, I think. So the concern that's being raised is about just how competitive it is as a candidate to get something and the experience that's being asked for. I think you're going to see that move. I think you're going to see a change in that. It's really flipped. We've got a skill shortage. There are not enough people to fill the roles we've got in technology. We're finding it really hard to find people. And I don't know if that's because people don't realise just how many different roles there are in technology and how interesting it is, and if people think they have to have all the qualifications. So the point being made about qualifications and experience, I don't know about you, Jag, but I'm finding our conversations with recruitment are really changing now. And we're talking about the fact that we need to think differently, because we're not going to fill all of our roles if we insist people have an IT degree or a certain number of years of experience. It's just not what it's like in the market now.
No, I agree with you as well, because the recruiters that I see on LinkedIn as well, they're looking beyond the CV now. So they really want to know what you're passionate about, what you're keen to get involved in, and that those competencies, the abilities that you've got to you know do the roles can speak more than your CV. You know, if you've got real passion for it and you've got some examples of some work you've done, maybe in a volunteer capacity as well, that can put you in good stead for some of these roles as well.
Definitely.
So a couple of slides. I know some people are more visual, so there's a couple of slides on what we're sort of talking about when we discuss change and transformation, and this is quite a common cycle for when it comes to sort of more transformational type activity. So across the business, perhaps on an annual basis as well, Emma, there's a period of strategic planning that takes place, typically in the first half of the year, and that's around strategic planning. So what do we want to embark on doing? What new or existing markets do we want to go into? Some really fundamentals when it comes to an organisation, how they plan to adapt to future challenges and things like that, how to remain successful as a business. And then it comes into sort of a larger portfolio as well, so a lot of planning element comes into this, and things might fall by the wayside, and then there's more compelling cases to take forward as a business as well. And then it goes into sort of financial planning and management of how this investment will look like, how much do we plan to invest. So depending on the organisation, that can vary into the millions. And again, every stage here, there's opportunities to get involved or even ask the question. You know, I suppose this slide is to represent that these talks are happening, whether you see emails about it or not. You know, these conversations are happening at I suppose at a senior level, that doesn't say that you're not permitted to know, or to even, again, shadow people who are involved in some of these talks as well. So don't ever be afraid to ask if this is what you're interested in. Then there's a lot of prioritization and sponsorship that takes place, and all the while we're asking the question, what value does this bring back? What benefits come back as well? And Emma, would you agree to kind of this sort of typical cycle that people will see?
Definitely. This is absolutely how we work in the trust. We go through that annual cycle, which then leads to us understanding overall kind of the big priorities for the organisation, and then it breaks down into, okay, well, what are the projects that we're going to be delivering that are going to help with that, and what are the particular products and services we offer where we need to keep investing and improving. That will then give us an understanding of, right, we're going to invest this kind of money in these areas, which absolutely then turns into that overall plan. And then we do agree, who's going to be involved in delivering and also owning. Sponsorship is really important. Having a great sponsor for a project or a program, somebody who owns that from a kind of a business point of view and really understands what needs to be delivered and why, and is therefore the kind of the voice of authority around the decision making. If you get that right on a project, it's always a way better project to work on than if it's a challenging sponsorship relationship. And then ultimately, you've got to be able to show you're delivering value, because if you don't do that, then what's the point? Ultimately, we don't do this stuff for the sake of it, and that always informs where else you carry on investing. So absolutely, we use this.
Yeah, so I think it's important for someone in early career to understand this, that this is quite typical. But coming in, and I go back to when I started, I didn't know how any of this was actually happening or ongoing. So I think it's quite interesting to know, and again, a good place to start where you can question if you are in a project, question the value, question that we're doing the right thing, question it's what the sponsor really wants, and things like that. And commercially, is it the right thing to do? Are we spending too much on something that's going to give us very little return? Don't feel you can't think and then vocalize what you feel when you're seeing change happen. And then when we talked about within a change cycle, so this does vary as well, which is the typical sort of project cycle where I suppose it's waterfall or agile, there are these stages. So you're at the define stage, where you're sort of going through the higher level requirements and then going into sort of deeper level requirements as well, but really trying to define what it is that you want to do. Again, open people's eyes to what's really possible. If they're going to keep repeating, well, this is how we always do it, well, then question, perhaps we need to go out to market and understand how other people are doing similar processes as well, and how we can change the way we work. There's a lot of planning that goes involved in it. Then obviously the implementation and execution of change, how it integrates, absolutely key, because if we don't integrate with change, and is it human to be change adverse? It sometimes feels that way, because everyone does have an element of being adverse to change.
Yeah.
What can you bring to help, a real integration of the changes that we're bringing?
It's really interesting. Again, there's really interesting roles in that space. Actually really understanding the motivations of the people that are going to be experiencing that change and what it means for them, and then helping them through that process so they are part of what's going to be delivered, and then how that all lands with them. Some really interesting work goes on in that space as well, and that's a really interesting place where you sit at that kind of interface where you're thinking about the technology, but you're also thinking about the people. There's plenty of things that go on in that space too, particularly in big programs.
And how you release it into business as usual is quite key as well. So we need people who are those integrators. So service integration is quite a key one. Again, it's not very a technical role, but you're working with a relative stakeholders to say, how do we plan to release this into the wild, into business as usual, and making sure that it's communicated effectively. So before you switch off the lights to an old application, have you told everyone, and does it happen at the right time in the business? So don't launch something when that business is about to do a 2-week-long marketing campaign and you're about to switch off one of their key systems. So it's really common sense, quite questions really, and I feel that sometimes they don't get asked. So you know, once you enter these sort of service integration roles or change and release role, think about it just from a human context, you know, because if you stick to a schedule and line item C says we must release on this date, well, there could be a reason why you shouldn't. So it's always worth, you know, the more people you speak to, the better, really. And these are all roles that, you know, if you're not confident in diving in, ask to shadow some of these roles. I think that's a really good place to start as well. So Scrum Master, Solution Architect, a BA, before you make that leap. And again, it's just showing that tenacity to say, I'm actually interested in business analyst. I'd like to shadow the business analyst who's working on a key project or program. So all useful stuff there.
Definitely agree. I think the only other one we haven't answered, because I've been just kind of having a quick scroll through the questions, was about programming languages. I'm not an expert on programming languages. I know that we don't really do anything in the Python space. We've still got quite a lot of JavaScript programming in the organisation, but actually we're moving more and more towards some of these bigger software as a service type providers, which is a very different type of coding. And you know, it's not really kind of sort of development hard coding in the same way. It's much more configuration. So we're moving on to Salesforce for our membership system, and that is very much about configuration. So the skill sets are shifting, I think. Jag, I don't know whether you know anything more in the programming languages space. As I said, it's not something I'm so expert in.
No, I wouldn't say I'm a hardened expert in there, so I'm afraid to venture in on that one. Unless there's anyone in the chat that wants to contribute.
The other thing to do is to have a look, I'd say, at what's out there in terms of job ads and just see what languages they're asking for, get a sense of what the marketplace looks like right now, because I do think it has shifted quite a lot.
So thank you all for the interaction today. Some great questions, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're just going to wrap up with what's left in the series as well. So all the other ones here are available on the BCS YouTube channel. And the two that are left to book on, Emma will be joining me, is Mythbusters as well. So it's really just a reflection on the previous talks and what we can tease out and say, you know, there's an assumption made here, you know, let's talk about our experience. And hopefully another speaker on there who's taken that exact journey, so didn't have an IT degree, did an IT placement where I work, and then has now moved out of IT into another area of the business. So a really good example there of what your journey can really look like in an organisation. And the last talk is on your purpose shield. So that's my sort of story, really, my journey with purpose and how I made it make sense for me, and how I feel there's some interesting exercises there that you could also try too. Just to wrap up on the final slide, that's the ways that you can contact us. So any question or query, you can always email groups@bcs.uk, and that will be answered either by the head office team or we'll go out to a community or a branch. And this is being led by the Birmingham branch, and those are the co-chairs there. So I am part of the Birmingham branch as well.